Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into something a little strange. Equal parts history lesson, midnight wander, and quiet dive into the restless minds of men who couldn't quite steal without shaking. Imagine it, the Valley of the Kings, moonlight spilling thin across dunes, and you creeping down into a corridor that smells of dust and forgotten incense. It's not exactly your average bedtime story, unless your average bedtime involves wondering if a centuries-old god is going to zap you mid-burglary. Don't worry, you'll be fine. Or maybe not. You might not make it out of this one, but hey, at least you'll learn something about criminal psychology along the way. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight, and what time is it in your corner of the world? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk with a group of men, calloused hands gripping flickering torches as you descend deeper into the necropolis. The walls close in, painted with scenes of gods who are frankly giving you some pretty judgmental side-eye. The steps under your sandals echo too loudly, like the stone itself might tattle to the authorities above. Each time you breathe, dust curls into your throat, dry and scratchy, like the tomb itself resents your presence. The men around you whisper, and you notice their voices crack just a little, like boys sneaking cookies. Except the punishment here is execution, not a slap on the wrist. There's a strange intimacy in this setting. You're shoulder to shoulder with men you half trust and half suspect might betray you for an extra chunk of gold. The torchlight dances, showing glimpses of treasures sealed away for eternity. But your pulse skips not because of greed, it's the anxiety, the fear of being caught in an act that everyone swears is cursed. You glance at one of the robbers beside you, and his eyes dart nervously to the carved figure of Osiris on the wall, as if the god might step right down and start filing a report. The psychology of the moment isn't hard to read. Anxiety thrives in situations like this. High stakes, low certainty, no easy escape. Performance anxiety isn't just for public speakers or musicians. It's here too, in the sweaty hands fumbling with chisels, in the pauses before breaking open a sealed door. You can feel it, that tightening in your chest, the way your palms itch. It's the same response your brain cooks up before a big exam. Except your exam doesn't involve a death sentence if you flunk. One quirky little detail historians note. Ancient Egyptian robbers often carried tools made from ordinary household items, chisels repurposed from carpentry, ropes twisted hastily together. It's almost funny, the thought of these grand tombs being breached with equipment that wouldn't look out of place in a backyard shed. The mismatch makes the anxiety worse. You're going up against stone walls built to last millennia, and your weapon of choice is a stick tied with fiber. No wonder your knees knock together. Every sound becomes magnified. A pebble skitters and you swear it's the guards. Your torch crackles, and you imagine it's the voice of Anubis laughing low. Anxiety loves to trick the senses, making shadows into pursuers and silence into threats. And there's a whisper in the back of your mind. Are you really ready for this? That's the mirror effect creeping in. Because as you stand here, you think of your own life. The exams you rushed, the job interviews where your voice shook, the first dates where you couldn't keep eye contact. The tomb is just a stage, and the fear feels eerily familiar. Experts still argue whether tomb robbers believed in the curses or used them as excuses when caught. Were they truly paralyzed by divine dread, or was the gods did it just a handy alibi? You'll never know for sure, but the ambiguity keeps the mind turning. Maybe both were true. Maybe belief itself was the curse, as powerful as any guard's sword. You pause, letting the moment sink in, the torchlight sputtering. Imagine the sound of your own heartbeat echoing in those stone halls. Anxiety has a way of hollowing out the space inside you, making room only for the pounding rhythm of don't fail, don't fail. And yet, you step forward, because greed, hunger, desperation, those push just as hard as fear pulls. A joke flickers across your thoughts, uninvited. If you ever think your work presentation is stressful, at least no one's promising to feed you to crocodiles if you flub the PowerPoint. Another laugh bubbles up when you realize you're in a tomb full of treasures, but the only thing anyone's really collecting tonight is sweaty palms. And the third one, Well, when you trip over a rock and nearly send your torch flying, you have to admit, if you're going to die, it'll probably be because of clumsiness, not a divine curse. The deeper you go, the stronger the pull between fear and desire. The walls breathe heat back at you, and the air feels like a living thing pressing against your chest. You think of the robber behind you, who mutters a prayer to his grandmother's amulet before every step. Is it superstition, coping mechanism, or just a way to keep his hands from shaking? You don't judge. You have your own small rituals too. That's the reframing. Performance anxiety isn't always about weakness. Sometimes it's proof that what you're doing matters, that the stakes are real. Whether you're robbing a tomb or whispering into a microphone late at night, that flutter in your chest is the same ancient drumbeat of being alive, alert, tested. You reach the sealed chamber door at last. The robbers gather around, breathless. The air feels tighter, like the chamber is already aware of your intrusion. And just before they strike, there's a pause. Long enough for you to wonder, if anxiety is the curse, maybe the treasure isn't worth it. But the hammer rises anyway, the seal cracks, and you're pulled forward with them, heart racing. You feel the cracked plaster give way beneath the hammer, and suddenly the chamber exhales at you, air that has been trapped for centuries, stale and strangely sweet. You cough, because it's dry as powdered bones, and for a moment it feels as though the gods themselves are trying to fill your lungs with sand. One of the men swears under his breath, and the torchlight shivers in his hand. The air is thick not only with dust, but with something heavier, the weight of gods pressing down on your shoulders. You step inside, and the first thing that greets you isn't the gold. It's silence. Not peaceful silence, accusing silence, the kind that makes your ears ring. Every painted wall feels alive. Isis stares at you with those painted almond eyes. Horus raises his falcon gaze, and Osiris sits cross-legged with the calm of someone who's been waiting for your mistake. The weight of divine judgment is heavier than any stone lid you'll lift tonight. One robber mutters that he can hear the rustling of wings. You hold still, straining your ears. Nothing, just the drip of condensation from the ceiling. But once a man says it, you almost hear it too, and your chest tightens. That's how psychology works down here. Suggestion seeps in faster than oxygen. The more you imagine the god's presence, the more they start to feel real. Your hand brushes a carved hieroglyph, and you swear it feels warm. Maybe it's just the torch heat? Or maybe the paranoia is already working its way through your nervous system. Performance anxiety can do that. Create sensations out of nerves. Think about the last time your leg went numb just before you spoke in public, or how your hands sweat during an exam. The body obeys fear's command before reason even checks the calendar. Here's a quirky fact to tuck into your torchlight. Egyptian robbers often carried bits of protective text stolen from other papyri, little insurance policies written in ink. Some even whispered the names of gods while prying open coffins, hoping flattery might outweigh theft. It's almost funny, the idea of asking Ra for a favor while also pinching his sacred jewelry. It's like breaking into a church and simultaneously asking the priest to bless your crowbar. But in this chamber, the weight of the gods feels crushing. You hear your own pulse in your ears, like a drumbeat echoing off stone. You start wondering whether the curse is just a story told to frighten robbers, or whether the fear itself is the curse, a parasite that takes root the moment you step into forbidden space. Experts still argue over this. Did fear of curses cause hallucinations, illness, even death? Or did the robbers simply die of ordinary causes? Heat stroke, infection, betrayal, that later storytellers dressed in divine clothing? You'll never know for sure. But standing here, with Osiris's painted eyes following your every movement, it doesn't feel like coincidence. A man beside you raises a lid, his hands trembling so violently you think he might drop it. Performance anxiety, plain and simple. The higher the stakes, the shakier the hands. He tries to steady himself, muttering about his children's hunger at home, as if reminding himself of the motive will silence the dread. You know that trick too. Before your own high-pressure moments, maybe you've reminded yourself of rent due or of someone you didn't want to disappoint. The need doesn't erase the fear, but it gives it a leash. The mirror effect creeps in here. As you watch these men fumble under painted stairs, you think of your own times being judged. Not by gods, perhaps, but by classrooms, bosses, partners, or strangers online. Anxiety always feels divine because it magnifies the audience, makes you believe every eye is a condemning one. Tomb robbers and modern minds share this stage fright, the terror of disappointing something larger than ourselves. Then comes the laugh. Nervous, but genuine. One of the men sneezes violently in the dust and almost drops his torch into a linen-wrapped mummy. The absurdity cuts through the tension, and you can't help but think, if this is divine punishment, it's slapstick. Another man whispers that maybe the gods would be less angry if they dusted the place first. You smile at the ridiculousness. Turns out, even in the Valley of the Kings, a little humor is the cheapest amulet. And for the third joke, you can't resist noticing that the lid they're struggling with is less cursed relic and more world's heaviest cookie jar. Still, when silence settles again, the anxiety returns heavier than ever. The walls close in, the painted gods watching, and you begin to wonder if every cough will echo up the passageway to alert the living guards above. It's an open loop. Will they be caught? Will the curse strike now or later? You don't know, and neither do they. And that uncertainty keeps you inching forward, heartbeat tight. Reframing helps. You tell yourself this isn't just robbery, it's a human experiment in psychology. These men, pressed between hunger and fear, embody the eternal conflict, survival against conscience. Maybe the gods aren't punishing anyone at all. Maybe the only gods here are adrenaline and cortisol, ruling like pharaohs inside your bloodstream. A healing pause lingers when you close your eyes and just breathe, letting the oppressive silence wash over you. You realize how much of fear is anticipation, not event. Nothing has actually happened yet. No guards, no curses, no collapsing ceilings. Just the sound of your own anxious body. That's all it ever was. You take another step. The gold glimmers faintly now, reflecting firelight. Desire collides with dread, and the balance tips. You don't know whether to pray or to laugh. Somewhere deep in your mind, the thought flickers. Maybe the real curse isn't in the tomb at all. Maybe it's the inability to walk through life without fear gnawing at your edges. And so you keep moving, torchlight quivering, gods watching. The chamber breathes with you, the weight of eternity pressing down, and still, you reach out. The lid finally settles on the ground with a muffled thud that seems to echo for miles. You freeze, lungs tight, and every robber does the same. Nobody breathes for a heartbeat, then two, then three. Your ears strain for footsteps, shouts, anything that means discovery. But the silence lingers. You exhale, shaky, and realize the real battle has only just begun. Not with guards, but with yourself. You grip your knees, feeling how slick they've become. Sweat rolls down your temples in tiny rivers, dripping into your eyes, stinging. Your hands tremble so badly you nearly drop the torch, and you notice the others suffering the same. It isn't clumsiness, it's performance anxiety in its rawest form. The tomb isn't an auditorium, but the pressure to perform is suffocating all the same. Imagine standing on a stage, thousands watching, and instead of applause, the consequence of failure is execution. That's where you are now. The human mind hates silence under pressure. One man starts whispering, as though any sound is safer than the weight of stillness. His voice cracks halfway through a word, and everyone glances at him like he's a child. You can feel his embarrassment. It's the same sinking gut you get when you mispronounce a word at a meeting, magnified by the possibility of death. The torches flicker, shadows warping across the chamber walls. You know it's just light on paint, but your brain insists otherwise. The falcon god seems to move. The lines of hieroglyphs seem to ripple like a live audience shifting in their seats. You blink rapidly, but the distortion lingers. Anxiety has a cruel trick. It makes your senses into liars. You've seen this before in yourself. How nerves once made you forget your own phone number. How panic erased entire sentences from memory. Here in the tomb, the stakes just make the errors more dramatic. A quirky little fact slips into your thoughts. Ancient Egyptian robbers sometimes chewed herbs like mandrake or lotus, hoping the numbing or euphoric effects would keep the fear at bay. Imagine standing in a holy chamber, chewing leaves like nervous gum, pretending the gods aren't glaring down at you. It's almost comical, this mix of crime and folk remedy. But you're not laughing. Your jaw clenches so tightly you feel your teeth grind. One man fumbles with the wrappings of a mummy, and his hands shake so violently he tears the linen unevenly. Another hisses at him, terrified the sound alone will wake the dead, or worse, the living guards. You realize you're holding your breath without meaning to, your chest aching. You finally let it out in a slow hiss, and it sounds too loud in the chamber. Everyone's nerves are contagious. One man's trembling is another's collapse. It's the open loop of dread that drives this performance anxiety. You never know when the punishment will fall. Will it be tonight, tomorrow, or in a month when a rash spreads across your skin and you wonder if it's just an infection or the curse finally blooming? Anxiety doesn't need proof. It only needs suggestion. You glance around at the others. Some try to steady themselves by muttering quick prayers. Others focus on the gold glinting in the torchlight, as though reminding themselves of the reward will steady the fear. You, though, you're caught somewhere between the two. Your heart aches with the need to survive poverty, to clutch treasure and flee. But your body betrays you. Every muscle tight as a bowstring, every breath shallow. And here comes the first joke of this section, bubbling up despite everything. One man tries to lift a golden vessel, only to grunt and nearly topple over. It's heavier than he expected. You can't help thinking, performance anxiety is bad enough, but now he's dealing with ancient Egyptian deadlifts. The second joke slips in when someone mutters, maybe Osiris is just messing with us, filling these jars with lead, and you almost laugh despite yourself. And the third, when you try to scratch your nose and nearly smack yourself in the face with your torch, you realize that clumsiness may be the real god of the underworld. But the humor only lasts a breath. The anxiety rolls back stronger, as if laughter only woke it further. You wonder, why does pressure always amplify the possibility of failure? Psychologists today might say it's the brain's spotlight effect, the illusion that every mistake is magnified, every tremor visible, every slip fatal. Here in the tomb, that illusion might as well be reality. A healing pause finds you. You stop moving, close your eyes, and let the silence hum in your ears. In that stillness, you realize how familiar this dread is. It's the same that grips performers before a concert or a student before a test. The difference is only context. Fear is universal. The setting is just the costume. When you open your eyes, the chamber hasn't changed, but you feel a strange solidarity with everyone who's ever been stage frightened in history. Experts still debate what truly broke these robbers. Was it the curse? Or was it simply the relentless anxiety, the sleepless nights, the trembling hands, the paranoia that rotted them from the inside? Anxiety can kill as surely as any sword, though slower and quieter. You think of your own restless nights, lying awake over worries that never happened. In that sense, maybe you've been cursed too, in a way no amulet can protect against. You watch as one man presses his forehead to the cold stone, whispering. You can't hear the words, but the gesture is universal, a plea, a confession, a desperate attempt to steady shaking hands. His torch flickers low, almost dying, and you feel a pang of empathy. You know what it is to ask for strength when none seems left. Performance anxiety here isn't just fear of failing the crime. It's fear of failing yourself, of not being able to steady your own body, of letting nerves betray what your hunger demands. That's the cruelest curse of all. The gold gleams at you, patient and unhurried. It has seen 1,000 robbers come and go, each trembling, each sweating, each carrying away anxiety as surely as treasure. You reach out, your hand still shaking, and wonder, maybe the real theft isn't gold. Maybe it's the courage you'll spend here, piece by piece, until none remains. You shuffle deeper into the chamber, the stale air thick with dust and dread. The treasure glimmers faintly, but the longer you stare, the less it feels like riches, and the more it looks like bait. You rub your eyes, but the pressure doesn't ease. That's when you hear it. Footsteps, or maybe not. A faint scrape, a soft shuffle, as if someone else is pacing in the corridor above. The men around you stiffen, their heads turn like owls, each certain they've heard it too. You lean closer to the wall, listening. Silence. Then another sound, distant but sharp. You swallow. Was it real, or just the echo of your own anxious heartbeat bouncing back at you? Paranoia blooms fast in places like this. You know the guards exist, and you know patrols wander the necropolis. But down here, with the walls pressing in, you start to believe you hear them even when they're nowhere near. It's a perfect case study in authority haunting the imagination, how the fear of being punished can be more suffocating than actual punishment. One man whispers, "They're here." Another shakes his head too quickly, his denial making him seem guilty already. The group begins to fracture into silence and murmurs. Half of them convinced the footsteps are real, half telling themselves it's the tomb settling. You feel trapped between both sides because the not knowing is worse than either. Your hands twitch against your thighs. You remember the chipped plaster you broke earlier, and now you wonder if the sound traveled upward, if a guard is even now marching this way. Every little mistake feels magnified. That's the psychology of paranoia. Once you open the door, every noise is an intruder. A quirky little fact slinks into your thoughts. Some Egyptian court documents from later trials actually describe robbers blaming the noise of their own tools for their downfall. They said the gods alerted the guards with echoes. You smile at the irony. Men in court trying to argue they weren't just criminals, but victims of divine acoustics. It's both absurd and, in its way, believable. The footsteps, or the imagined footsteps, come again. Louder this time, or just closer in your mind? Your breath hitches. One of the men drops his tool, and the clatter rings like thunder. Everyone freezes. Your torchlight wavers in your shaky hand, and you find yourself whispering, "Don't move." You don't know if you're talking to them, to the air, or to yourself. This is the open loop at its cruelest. The guards might be here, or might not. You can't resolve the question, and so your anxiety multiplies. Your throat tightens, and you can almost feel the phantom hands of authority already on your shoulders, dragging you out into the sun for judgment. Then, nothing. No shouting, no boots clattering down the stone steps, just silence again. The group exhales collectively, but the relief is shallow. You don't believe you're safe, only reprieved. And that difference keeps your chest tight. The mirror effect sneaks in as you think of your own ghosts of authority, maybe a boss you once dreaded, or the invisible eyes of an online crowd. You felt those footsteps too, echoing in your mind long before anyone showed up. Tomb robbers or office workers, it doesn't matter. Authority doesn't need to be present to control you. It only needs to be imagined. One of the men wipes his brow with a shaking hand. Another mutters a joke through his teeth. If the guards do come, let's hope they're scared of curses too. It's weak humor, but it breaks the tension for a beat. You chuckle when someone adds, "Or maybe we tell them we're tour guides, just showing Osiris around his new home." And when your torch nearly slips because your palms are slick, you can't help but laugh softly, whispering, "If anyone dies tonight, it'll be from clumsy fire, not divine wrath." 3 jokes, fragile but real, and each one buys you a little oxygen. Still, when the laughter fades, the anxiety remains. The footsteps, real or imagined, linger in your head. You realize how fragile the human mind is under strain. One creak of stone, one shuffle of sand, and suddenly the entire group's loyalty falters. They glance at each other, suspicion growing. Who dropped the tool? Who made the sound? Who's to blame if the guards arrive? That's the reframing moment. Authority isn't just external. It seeps into relationships, fractures trust, and makes men turn on each other before the guards ever do. You've seen this in your own life, too. How fear of punishment or failure makes groups splinter, each person desperate to avoid blame. You lean against the wall, heart hammering. The painted eyes of the gods glare at you, but they're almost a comfort compared to the imagined overseer's footsteps. At least the gods stay put. The guards, though, you never know. Anxiety thrives on unpredictability, and here you are, feeding it every breath. A healing pause settles over you. You close your eyes and listen, not for footsteps, not for echoes, but for your own breath. In and out, steady if not calm. You let the silence hold you, realizing that sometimes the best defense against paranoia is stillness. The footsteps vanish when you stop hunting for them. For a moment, peace trickles in. But when you open your eyes, the group is still restless. One man's torch shakes so badly it nearly gutters out. Another grips his tool like a weapon. You know then, even if the guards never come, the fear of them has already done its work. Anxiety doesn't need reality to survive. It thrives on imagination. Experts still debate whether the stories of phantom overseers were superstition or clever excuses. Did the robbers truly hear them, or were they fabrications to justify failure? You're not sure it matters. the mind made them real enough. And here in the chamber, as your ears strain for sounds that may never come, you feel the truth of it. Sometimes the ghosts of authority are louder than authority itself. You straighten your back, wipe your palms on your robe, and force yourself to move again. The chamber isn't waiting, and neither is your anxiety. You take one more step toward the glittering treasure, haunted by footsteps that may exist only in your head. The treasure lies in heaps now, each object glimmering faintly under unsteady torchlight. Golden cups, necklaces strung with stones the color of blood and sky, little statues wrapped in linen, all of it waiting. But you can't enjoy the view for long, because the moment someone touches a piece, the mood shifts. The first man claims a necklace, holding it too tightly, eyes darting left and right. Another snatches a vessel from his hands, muttering about fairness. Voices rise, hushed but sharp, each syllable jagged like chipped pottery. It doesn't take long to realize the guards aren't the only danger. The men you crept in with, the ones you trusted enough to breathe the same dusty air, are unraveling before your eyes. You step back, watching. This is the psychology of fragile trust. Greed doesn't create cracks, it widens one's already there. Everyone entered with an unspoken agreement to share. But agreements written in fear are as weak as papyrus in the rain. Now, with treasure actually in hand, anxiety blooms into anger. A man you barely know snarls something about his family's hunger. Another insists his work breaking the seal was hardest, that he deserves more. The debate spirals quickly. You realize no one's worried about fairness, they're worried about survival after the split. What if one man grows jealous? What if another talks too much? Division here isn't about gold, it's about safety. Performance anxiety takes a new form. No longer about fumbling tools or breaking silence, it's about saying the wrong word, moving too quickly, betraying too much desire. You feel your body stiffen, each gesture carefully measured, each glance calculated to show loyalty but not weakness. It's exhausting, this balancing act. A quirky fact flickers in your memory. Ancient papyri record tomb robbers' confessions, and one recurring theme is betrayal. Robbers often turned each other in, trading loyalty for leniency. The law didn't need to find them. Their own greed made them accuse one another. You imagine the scribe recording their testimonies, amused at how quickly alliances dissolved. Back in the chamber, one robber clutches his haul, his knuckles white. He looks at you, and for a split second, you see it, the thought crossing his mind that maybe fewer men means larger shares. You swallow hard, pulse racing. The tension hums, louder than any imagined footsteps. Then someone tries a joke, desperate to lighten the air. "We'll measure by weight," he whispers. "Though I'll take gold over sand, thank you." It earns a thin chuckle, but doesn't ease the tightness in your chest. You add your own, pointing to a tiny amulet and saying, "I'll just take this one." Seems lighter on the conscience. A laugh rises despite the fear. And the third joke comes when another man mutters, "Split it evenly." Sure, after the gods take their share. Even you smile at that, though the humor is as brittle as the bones around you. The open loop gnaws at you. Who will betray whom first? You keep glancing back at the sealed corridor, half expecting a man to bolt and leave you all to the guards. Every second without resolution heightens the anxiety, a drumbeat you can't silence. The mirror effect presses in. Haven't you felt this before? Those moments when teamwork turned sour, when a colleague eyed your effort with suspicion, when a friend grew jealous? Greed doesn't have to be gold. Sometimes it's praise, attention, or love. The tomb is only a mirror, showing you what happens whenever humans share too little trust under too much pressure. A healing pause finds you when the argument subsides for a heartbeat. You notice the torch smoke curling lazily upward, painting faint gray trails across painted ceilings. The silence almost feels sacred again, as if the gods themselves demand a break from bickering. You close your eyes, breathing deeply, letting the heavy air settle into your lungs. For a moment, you remember the outside world, clear skies, simple hunger, a life without stone walls. The pause soothes, even if briefly. When you open your eyes, the men are still tense. No one's willing to admit fear, but it radiates off them. One mutters that the curse punishes those who quarrel. Another retorts that the curse punishes everyone, so why not grab more? The argument never resolves. It loops endlessly, each man defending his choice, each man doubting the others. Experts still argue about this. Were robberies group efforts doomed by human nature, or did some bands actually manage to cooperate? Archaeologists find abandoned tools and half-looted chambers, suggesting betrayal or panic ended many raids. Yet some tombs were stripped bare, evidence that occasionally trust held. The debate lingers like dust, impossible to sweep away. You watch, torn between joining the argument and staying silent. Silence feels safer, but it also marks you as suspicious. Anxiety swells again. You don't know what performance will protect you best: laughter, loyalty, or distance. The reframing hits you. Perhaps this isn't about treasure at all. Perhaps tomb robbery is just an experiment in human psychology, testing the limits of cooperation under greed. The gods don't need to punish anyone. Humans are more efficient punishers of themselves. As the men divide small piles, you clutch your torch tighter, hands trembling. You wonder if the true inheritance of this tomb isn't gold but mistrust. You look into the painted eyes of Osiris again and think, maybe the god isn't guarding the treasure. Maybe he's just watching to see how quickly humans destroy themselves when offered too much too soon. The piles sit unevenly on the dusty floor, glinting in the light that trembles from your torch. Each man crouches close to his share, arms curled around treasure as if gold might sprout legs and run away. The air is thick with sweat now, heavy with the scent of old stone and anxious skin. You wipe your brow with the back of your wrist, but it only makes your face stickier. The body has a way of mirroring the mind, overheated, restless, unable to calm. Your legs ache from crouching so long. When you stand, your knees wobble, and for a moment you feel the ground tilt. Your vision blurs at the edges, torchlight smearing into streaks of orange. Dehydration. It creeps in silently, but here it feels like the tomb itself is draining you. You realize your tongue is glued to the roof of your mouth, the thirst growing unbearable. But no one dares to sip from the water skin. The noise of swallowing might as well be a war drum. One man wipes his trembling hands on his linen tunic, muttering that the gods must be making him shake. You know the truth. His body is simply betraying him under stress. Performance anxiety isn't just about shaky hands before a speech or fumbling in an exam. It's the same nervous system at work here, flooding the bloodstream with adrenaline, tightening muscles, speeding up breath. In the tomb, the symptoms are magnified by heat, dust, and fear. You kneel, pressing your palm flat to the stone floor. It feels cool, grounding. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the cold seep into your skin. A healing pause, however brief. When you open them again, the scene hasn't improved. The men are still sweating, still glaring, still shifting like animals ready to bolt. A quirky fact drifts into your mind. Archaeologists once found evidence of torches burning unevenly in looted tombs, suggesting robbers' hands shook so badly that wax dripped in scattered pools. A physical record of anxiety, immortalized in hardened resin. You look down at your own torch, see the uneven drip of pitch along its shaft, and wonder if you're leaving behind the same signature of trembling. Someone tries to steady himself by humming softly, a tune you don't recognize. Another snaps at him to stop. The humming ceases, replaced by the sound of shallow breathing. You catch yourself doing it too. Short, quick inhales, never enough to fill your lungs. Your body is mimicking their rhythm. Anxiety spreads like smoke. The open loop gnaws at you. How long can your body hold under this pressure? Will exhaustion topple you before the guards do? The more you think about it, the more you notice each symptom. Your dry throat, your shaky knees, your slick palms. Every focus amplifies the discomfort. You feel trapped in your own skin. Then the first joke cracks through. One man, fanning himself with a strip of linen, whispers, "Maybe the gods cursed us with endless sweat, not death." Another smirks, pointing at a golden jar. "Fill that with our sweat, and we'll be richer than the pharaoh." You laugh despite yourself, and when your own stomach growls audibly, you add, "Guess I brought the wrong offering." 3 jokes, stitched together like desperate bandages, and for a moment the tension lightens. But the laughter doesn't last. The heat presses in, relentless. One man sways, catching himself on the wall, his chest heaving. You watch him gulp air, eyes wide, certain he's about to faint. That's when you realize, physical collapse is the tomb's silent guard. No curses, no blades, just the body's rebellion against its own fear. The mirror effect pulls at you. Haven't you felt this before? The exam room where your hands shook so hard you could barely hold a pen. The office meeting where your shirt clung with sweat, betraying nerves you wanted to hide. The sleepless night where your chest rose and fell too quickly, convinced your heart might break free. The tomb is only a stage. You've rehearsed this performance before, countless times in your own small ways. Reframing comes unbidden. Perhaps the trembling, the sweating, the shallow breath, these aren't signs of weakness. They're proof of survival, the body's way of preparing to fight or flee. Maybe the mistake isn't in trembling, but in believing trembling is failure. You look at the men around you, their bodies betraying the same signs, and think, we're not cursed, we're alive. A healing pause stretches when you close your eyes again, slowing your breath deliberately. Inhale, count, exhale. You picture the desert night above, cool winds skimming across sand, stars indifferent to your struggle. The contrast soothes you briefly, like a sip of water you don't actually have. But when you open your eyes, the others haven't calmed. One licks cracked lips, eyes darting like a hunted animal. Another grips his share of treasure so hard his knuckles pale. Anxiety isn't easing, it's spreading. Experts still argue whether the robber's collapse was due to divine punishment or sheer physical strain. Was it curses or dehydration? Spirits or exhaustion? The debate is endless. But standing here, sweat dripping down your neck, you feel the answer. Fear is enough. Anxiety itself can carve its curse into muscle and bone. Your hand shakes as you lift your torch, the flame sputtering with each tremor. You try to steady it, but the more you focus, the worse it gets. That's performance anxiety's cruelest trick. The more you try to stop shaking, the more your body obeys the fear instead. The treasure gleams still, patient and unbothered. It doesn't sweat. It doesn't shake. It only waits for men to crumble around it. You swallow hard, throat dry as sand, and wonder if the tomb has already won. Not with curses or guards, but with your own fragile body. The chamber air feels heavier now, almost syrup-thick as you move. Each step leaves you dizzy. Every breath tastes of soot and limestone. The men gather near the entry they forced open, staring at the jagged plaster shards scattered on the floor. They argue again, voices sharp but low, whether to reseal the tomb door before leaving. You crouch beside the broken frame, running your fingers along the cracked seal. The clay crumbles at your touch, brittle after centuries. The question hangs in the stale air. Do you leave it gaping, announcing to any guard that intruders have been here? Or do you try to patch it, gambling that a clumsy repair will fool someone with sharper eyes? One robber insists resealing is the safest choice. Make the tomb look untouched. Maybe no one checks for weeks. Another snaps that resealing wastes time, that the guards could appear any second. The argument grows heated. You watch the torchlight jitter across their faces, each one drawn tight with exhaustion and fear. Anxiety has a new focus now. Evidence. The walls don't only watch, they might testify. Your own chest tightens as you picture guards discovering the broken plaster. You imagine their voices echoing down the corridor, their sandals slapping stone. But then you picture fumbling with clay, trying to smooth it back while your hands shake, and you wonder if the effort only makes guilt more obvious. The open loop spirals. Reseal and risk looking suspicious. Leave it open and risk discovery anyway. There is no certainty, only choices layered with dread. A quirky little fact slides into memory. Some ancient tomb robbers actually carried clay with them, pre-mixed, ready to reseal doors. Archaeologists have found patches of mismatched plaster, evidence of desperate cover-ups. You imagine those men crouched like you, sweating into clay, hoping their amateur masonry could outwit professionals. It's almost absurd, grand theft undone by sloppy home improvement. The torches flicker. One man presses his palm into the dust, trying to mold it into a makeshift patch. Another snorts, whispering, "You think Osiris will be fooled by your pottery skills?" The humor lands bitter, but it breaks the tension for a heartbeat. You add your own, pointing to the crumbling fragments and murmuring, "If this were a competition, we'd win worst sculptors of Egypt." Someone chuckles softly, though the sound quivers. And when another drops a lump of clay that splats against the floor, you can't help thinking, perhaps the gods are laughing hardest of all. 3 jokes, fragile, but enough to keep panic from boiling over. The mirror effect presses in. Haven't you felt this choice before? The decision whether to hide mistakes or admit them? Maybe you've patched over errors in your own life, painted over cracks, hoping no one would notice. The tomb is only magnifying what you've always known. The anxiety of covering tracks is sometimes worse than the guilt of leaving them bare. One robber kneels at the threshold, pressing the clay hard, muttering that the gods will blind the eyes of the guards. Another hisses that no god helps thieves, that the more they meddle, the faster punishment comes. Their whispered debate grows frantic, and you feel your own breath match their rhythm. Fast, shallow, unsteady. Reframing helps. Maybe the question isn't about the door at all. Maybe it's about control. Humans grasp at control when they fear chaos, even if the control is illusion. Resealing the tomb won't guarantee safety, but it gives the mind something to cling to, a story to tell itself. We hit it, we're safe. You feel the power of that illusion tugging at you, soothing even as you know it's flimsy. A healing pause comes when you touch the cold stone again, focusing only on texture. Smooth in some places, jagged in others. You trace the cracks, letting the sensory detail ground you. For a moment, you don't hear arguments or footsteps, only the silent story written in dust and clay. Experts still argue over how much resealing helped. Some patched tombs were discovered within days, others lasted years. Archaeologists debate whether guards were fooled or complicit. Were these hasty repairs clever or futile? You'll never know for sure. But crouching here, you feel the weight of that uncertainty pressing into your chest. The group finally acts. One man smooths the last lump of clay, stepping back to admire his crude work. It's crooked, obvious to your eyes, but in the dim torchlight, it looks like closure. You know it won't last, but the relief spreads anyway. Bodies unclench, shoulders drop. Anxiety doesn't need resolution, it only needs the illusion of it. You lean against the wall, exhaling. The chamber breathes with you. Maybe the gods aren't fooled, maybe the guards won't be either. But for tonight, you've sealed more than a door. You've sealed a part of your fear, pressed it into clay, fragile but enough. The clay patch hardens behind you, a crooked scar on the tomb's mouth, but the unease doesn't fade. You move further inside, deeper into the honeycomb of chambers, where shadows seem thicker, heavier. Here, the arguments soften into whispers. The men exchange uneasy glances, as if the gods might be crouched in every corner, waiting to pounce. You notice one of them fiddling with a small amulet, the bronze worn smooth from constant rubbing. He presses it to his lips, murmuring words so low you can't catch them. Another man ties a strip of linen around his wrist, knotting it 3 times while muttering a charm he swears his grandmother used against sickness. The scene is almost absurd. Hardened thieves, sweaty and tense, reduced to superstition like children hiding under blankets. Your torch throws jittering light across their faces, and you catch the tremor in their eyes. Anxiety makes people crave ritual. You've seen it before. Athletes bouncing the same number of times before a serve, students tapping pencils rhythmically before exams. Patterns give the illusion of control, and in a tomb where gods might strike at any moment, even nonsense becomes sacred. You feel the itch in your own chest, the longing to do something, anything, that promises safety. Your hand drifts toward a chipped scarab lying among the dust, half buried. For a second, you almost pocket it, not for its value, but for its comfort. The superstition spreads like smoke. Even skepticism bends under the weight of fear. A quirky little fact whispers in your ear. Some Egyptian tomb robbers were found buried with protective spells written on scraps of papyrus tucked into their clothing. Not prayers for forgiveness, prayers for luck, as if even in death they wanted insurance against the curses they disturbed. It blurs the line between crime and devotion, reminding you that humans rarely steal without first asking someone, anyone, to look the other way. The men's rituals grow stranger. One spits deliberately into the corner, claiming it wards off bad spirits. Another refuses to step directly over a shadow, insisting it's a doorway for ghosts. The chamber fills with tiny performances, each one designed to quiet the roaring in their ears. It's almost comical. You can't resist whispering, "Careful, we'll spend more time praying than stealing." Someone chuckles nervously. Another mutters, "Better prayers than curses." And when one man sneezes mid-ritual, accidentally blowing out his torch, the group nearly collapses into laughter. 3 jokes, shaky but real, and for a moment the darkness doesn't seem so absolute. Still, the laughter fades quickly. The rituals continue, and you realize superstition is no longer just a comfort, it's a requirement. No one dares move without muttering, crossing fingers, clutching amulets. The anxiety has shifted shape, clothed itself in belief. It's a mirror of your own habits, the way you've carried lucky charms or repeated calming phrases before something daunting. The mirror effect lands heavy. Fear always births superstition, whether in a tomb or a modern office. Reframing creeps in as you watch. Maybe these rituals aren't foolish. Maybe they're a kind of self-made therapy, a way to slow breath, to anchor trembling hands. The words might not banish gods, but they give men rhythm, something predictable in a place where every sound feels like doom. Anxiety can't always be silenced, but it can be tricked into focus. You pause, letting this thought soothe you, a healing pause. You study the painted gods on the walls. Hathor's soft smile, Thoth's ibis head bent over papyrus. Maybe they're not threatening at all. Maybe they're just watching, curious, amused at the frantic rituals of thieves. You let the silence linger, deep and oddly calming. But the calm doesn't last. One man's prayer grows louder, his voice sharp, desperate. Another hisses at him to shut up before the guards hear. The argument flares again, this time about which gods should be invoked. Some cling to Osiris for mercy, others to Anubis for safe passage. The debate is frantic, almost absurd, thieves squabbling about whose divine insurance plan offers the best coverage. Experts still argue whether Egyptian robbers truly believed in the curses or used them as excuses when caught. Were these prayers genuine pleas or rehearsed lines for later trials? Archaeologists uncover charms and amulets, but meaning is harder to pin down. Faith, fear, and strategy blur too easily to separate. You wipe your palms on your tunic, feeling the rough linen scrape your damp skin. You realize you've been whispering too, unconsciously, little fragments of words that mean nothing but carry rhythm. Anxiety demands an outlet, and you've given it one. You wonder how many modern rituals you still carry. Checking locks twice, tapping pockets for keys, repeating phrases before bed. The tomb isn't so far from your own life after all. The treasure waits silently, indifferent to human rituals. Gold doesn't tremble, stone doesn't mutter. Only the living dance their little steps, as if choreography could outwit fate. You press the scarab harder in your palm, cool and grounding. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But in this place, belief itself is treasure. The men quiet at last, though their rituals linger in twitching fingers and muttered breaths. You move forward together, each carrying not just gold, but superstition, weaving anxiety into prayer, into charm, into talisman. And though you know none of it truly seals your safety, you feel lighter anyway. Because sometimes, the ritual itself is the cure. The torches spit and crackle, tossing warped shadows against the walls. You watch as the flickering light bends statues into giants and hieroglyphs into writhing serpents. Every surface of the chamber seems alive, moving when you're not looking, retreating when you stare too long. The men stiffen at the sight of their own shadows, jumping as though strangers lurk nearby. You step cautiously, the crunch of sand beneath your sandals far too loud. The shadows leap, multiplying, stretching thin and monstrous across the walls. It's the psychology of projection, fear made visible, nerves painted large. Your brain knows it's only torchlight, but your chest doesn't believe. Each jitter of flame births an enemy from smoke. One robber gasps suddenly, pointing to the far corner. You whirl, heart thudding, and see nothing but the curve of painted Anubis stretching long in the torchlight. Relief floods you, but the dread lingers. Your body remains convinced danger is real, refusing to listen to reason. Anxiety doesn't need proof, it just needs darkness. A quirky little fact flashes across your mind. Ancient Egyptians believed shadows carried a piece of the soul. To disturb a shadow was to wound the person. Imagine then how unsettling these distorted forms would feel. Souls stretched thin, twisted into monstrous outlines. It makes the fear of shadows more than childish. It's cultural, spiritual. You can almost hear the gods whispering through the flickers. The torches hiss again, one guttering low. The chamber plunges into half-darkness, and panic ripples through the group. A man fumbles with the flame, hands shaking, whispering that the shadows are multiplying on purpose. Another insists he saw a figure move where no one stood. You clutch your torch tighter, knuckles white, breath shallow. The open loop gnaws. Are the shadows harmless, or are they omens? You can't resolve the question, and the uncertainty claws at your ribs. The longer you stare, the more the shadows seem to slither. One looks like a crouched guard ready to strike, another like a woman reaching out. You blink hard, but the illusions remain. Humor bursts through, brittle but necessary. One man mutters, "If that shadow's a guard, he's awfully patient." Another chuckles, adding, "At least they don't eat." You can't resist. Great, now even my shadow looks richer than me. Three jokes stitched together in fear, and you laugh, shaky but real. The mirror effect pulls you inward. Haven't you felt this before? Lying awake in a dark room, the coat on the chair suddenly a stranger's silhouette. Or staring into a crowd, certain every glance hides judgment. Your own mind has painted monsters onto neutral shapes. These shadows are only a magnified version of your everyday illusions. Anxiety always stretches reality thin until it snaps. Reframing helps, if only briefly. Perhaps the shadows aren't enemies, but guides, reminders of how fear works, showing you its outlines. They prove the imagination's power, its ability to make phantoms out of nothing. Maybe they're not curses, but lessons, mirrors of the restless mind. You pause, a healing pause, and lower your torch slightly. The shadows shrink instantly, retreating like frightened animals. The change soothes you. It's proof you still hold some control. The darkness may stretch your fears, but the flame bends them back. You breathe slowly, focusing on the rhythm of the flicker instead of the monsters it paints. Still, the men don't calm. One insists the shadows move independently, that they'll follow him home. Another swears he saw his father's face in the wall. Their paranoia spreads, feeding the air with dread. You feel it pressing in, your own doubts reawakening. What if they're right? What if the shadows aren't projections, but omens, each one warning of doom? Experts still debate whether hallucinations in tombs were supernatural or psychological. Were these shadows truly visions, or simply stress-bending perception? Did the robbers invent curses, or did curses invent them? The ambiguity lingers, impossible to settle. You're left staring into the walls, unsure if you're studying paint or prophecy. Your torch sputters again, flame dancing wildly. You steady it, hand trembling, sweat dripping from your brow. The shadows quiver, but now you force yourself to see them differently, not as monsters, but as proof you're alive. Fear makes shapes move. Courage names them illusions. You glance at the treasure, golden surfaces reflecting warped versions of yourself. You look taller, stranger, distorted. Perhaps that's the greatest curse, seeing yourself stretched thin, a shadow of what you hope to be. The chamber hums with anxiety, each flicker birthing another phantom. You tighten your grip, whispering to yourself that shadows are only smoke and light. Still, you can't help wondering as you move deeper. What if the darkest shadows are the ones you carry inside, following you whether torches burn or not? Your torch steadies again, the flame tall and thin, and it casts light onto the carved walls where hieroglyphs march in orderly rows. You trail your fingers along them, the grooves deep enough to catch your nails. The paint has faded, but the eyes remain sharp, wide, almond-shaped, staring straight ahead as though centuries haven't dulled their watchfulness. You shiver despite the heat. Everywhere you look, eyes. Painted eyes, carved eyes, inlaid eyes. They don't blink, they don't soften, they simply stare. It's easy to forget these were meant as guardians, carved to protect the pharaoh's passage into eternity. But in the flickering light of your torch, they look like witnesses, silent judges recording every theft. One of the men notices your pause and mutters, "They see everything." His voice trembles, not with reverence, but with guilt. Another hisses at him to keep moving, but you can tell the thought has lodged in everyone's minds. The silence grows heavier. You shift your weight, suddenly conscious of how loud your sandals scrape against stone. The psychology here is striking. Guilt personified. The carvings don't move, but your anxious brain insists they do. It's projection again. Your conscience given eyes. Every guilty act has a witness, even if only imagined. You think of the times in your own life you've felt watched without reason. Double-checking your words in a quiet room, hesitating before clicking send on a message, glancing over your shoulder while doing nothing wrong. The mirror effect lands hard. Your conscience doesn't need real eyes. It invents them. A quirky little fact comes to mind. Some Egyptian tomb paintings included false doors, portals carved into the wall, with eyes painted above them. These were meant as spiritual gateways, places where the dead could pass through to observe offerings. But to you now, they feel like surveillance devices, ancient equivalents of security cameras blinking eternally. You almost laugh at the comparison, imagining Osiris as the world's first CCTV operator. The group grows restless. One man mutters that the eyes are memorizing their faces, etching guilt into the stone. Another insists he saw a pupil move, the black dot shifting to follow him. You shake your head, but your chest tightens. Once the suggestion is spoken, you can't unsee it. Every glance feels personal, directed, condemning. The open loop tightens. Do the eyes only watch, or do they remember? Will they carry your face into eternity, whispering it to gods and guards alike? You'll never know, and the uncertainty burns hotter than the torches. One of the men tries to joke, weak but defiant. At least they didn't carve ears, then we'd be in trouble. Another chuckles nervously, pointing at a painted ibis. He's writing everything down, scribe of our sins. You add your own. If they're keeping records, I hope they spell my name wrong. 3 jokes, feeble shields, but they spark a ripple of laughter that feels like fresh air in the suffocating chamber. Still, the laughter doesn't erase the eyes. They loom, unblinking. You wonder if the gods truly see, or if guilt alone makes the carvings alive. Experts still debate whether robbers were undone by divine curses or by their own guilty consciences. Were they haunted by gods or by themselves? The ambiguity lingers, unsolved, stretching across centuries. Reframing helps. Perhaps the eyes aren't judges but mirrors. They don't condemn, they reflect. You see your own fear projected onto their painted stares. The gods don't need to watch you. You watch yourself constantly, mercilessly. Maybe the carvings are only tools, amplifying the guilt already gnawing at your ribs. A healing pause comes when you lean close to one carved figure, nose almost brushing the stone. You notice the cracks in the paint, the tiny flakes of color, the way time has dulled its once bright gaze. The detail soothes you. These eyes aren't eternal. They're fragile, mortal, decaying, just like you. You exhale slowly, letting the thoughts settle, but the men don't share your calm. One backs away, refusing to turn his back on the carvings. Another insists on covering the eyes with a cloth, as though blindness will equal safety. Their paranoia feeds itself, spiraling out of control. You feel your palms sweat, torch slipping in your grip. The gold glimmers still, indifferent. The eyes watch still, relentless. And you stand between them, torn between hunger and conscience, between desire and judgment. Experts might argue forever whether guilt is external or internal, divine or psychological. You don't need a conclusion. You're living the debate now. Each glance at the carved eyes feels like a confession. Each step deeper a betrayal written in stone. You close your eyes briefly, whispering to yourself, they're only paint, only stone. But when you open them again, the eyes are still there and you know the truth. Whether gods or guilt, the witnesses are real enough. You move on, but their gaze clings to you like dust. You wonder if it will follow you even after you leave, if you'll still see painted pupils when you close your eyes to sleep. The silence of the chamber deepens, though the air still vibrates faintly with the hiss of torches. You feel the weight of those carved eyes on your back as you crouch near a broken coffin lid. Dust swirls upward, catching in your throat, forcing a cough you try to swallow. One of the men leans closer, muttering something. Not to you, but to himself. At first you think it's a prayer. His lips move quickly, the words falling out in fragments, too soft to catch. Then you realize it isn't a plea for safety. It's a confession. He's talking about his mother, about the grain he couldn't buy, about the hunger that drove him here. His voice cracks like brittle clay, and you feel a shiver that has nothing to do with gods or curses. The others glance at him uneasily. No one wants to hear regret in a place like this. Regret feels contagious. You shift uncomfortably because the sound of his voice cuts deeper than the silence ever did. It's guilt spoken aloud, not painted on the walls this time, but leaking from a man's own mouth. Performance anxiety takes on a new form here. It's not about failing the theft or fumbling tools. It's about losing control of yourself, about letting words slip out that you never meant to share. You know that sensation. The moment your mouth betrays your secrecy, when nerves loosen your grip on silence. A truth blurted in class, an awkward overshare in a meeting, a late-night message you wish you'd swallowed. You feel his shame as though it's your own. A quirky little fact drifts into your thoughts. Papyri from the tomb robber trials record confessions in striking detail. Some men spoke of poverty so plainly, it reads almost like a sermon. Others babbled about omens, about shadows chasing them in dreams. Archaeologists note that many confessions came not under torture, but freely. Men cracking under the pressure of guilt, spilling words into the dust. That's what you're watching now. History replaying itself, a mind splintering under its own conscience. The man presses his forehead to the coffin lid, whispering louder now. He admits he dreamed of the dead rising, of his hands withering into claws. He begs forgiveness from gods he's already defied. The group shifts uncomfortably. One robber hisses at him to shut up, afraid the noise will echo. Another mutters that words themselves invite curses, but the man can't stop. Anxiety has turned into confession, confession into compulsion. The open loop gnaws at you. Is his guilt his downfall or his salvation? Will the gods punish him for the theft or forgive him for honesty? You'll never know. The ambiguity digs deeper than the dust in your throat. You force a thin smile, trying humor to break the tension. At least he's confessing here, you whisper. Better than blurting it in front of the guards. Someone chuckles nervously. Another adds, maybe Osiris runs on bribes of honesty. You add a third. If he keeps confessing, we won't need scribes. The walls will learn to write. The laughter is weak but relieving, like cracks of light in heavy clouds. Still, the man continues. His shoulders quake, his voice breaking. You can see how guilt eats him alive. And in that moment, the mirror effect hits you. Haven't you whispered your own confessions into dark rooms when no one was listening? Haven't you spoken regrets to the ceiling, to shadows, to silence itself? You see yourself in him, exposed, trembling, unable to carry the weight of your own choices. Reframing shifts the scene. Maybe confession isn't weakness. Maybe it's strength, the moment nerves break open, revealing something real. Anxiety can trap, but it can also release. The man's muttered words may not stop the guards or curses, but they might stop the slow rot of secrecy. You find yourself wondering if you'd feel lighter too if you spoke your fears aloud. You close your eyes briefly, letting the man's words echo. A healing pause. You inhale the dusty air, exhale slowly. The stillness soothes, as though the tomb itself holds space for his honesty. For a moment, guilt feels less like a curse and more like proof of humanity. Fragile, trembling, but sincere. Experts still debate how much confessions in court were voluntary, how much was coercion, how much was performance. Were men speaking truth or playing roles to survive? The debate remains unresolved, a loop without an answer. And here, listening to the man mutter into the dust, you wonder the same. Is this his truth, or just a performance for gods he hopes might be merciful? The others drag him away at last, pressing a hand over his mouth. His eyes are wet, his body limp, as though confession drained the last of his strength. The silence afterward feels heavier than the words themselves. Everyone avoids looking at each other, as though meeting eyes might force their own secrets to surface. You clutch your torch, sweat dripping into your palm. The gold still glimmers, but it looks smaller now, pettier. The words linger louder than the treasure. Regret, hunger, guilt. You realize the true weight of the tomb isn't stone or curse. It's the burden of conscience, pressed into every chest. You walk forward, carrying not just loot, but a question. When fear cracks you open, will your words betray you too? The group moves slowly now, treasure clinking faintly inside sacks that look too small for the weight they carry. Every step feels heavier, not because of the gold, but because of the gnawing pull inside your chest. Hunger, that's what has dragged you here all along. Not greed for riches you'll never spend lavishly, not dreams of palaces or silks, just hunger. Your stomach aches as if it's folding in on itself. You lick cracked lips and catch the eye of another robber, a gaunt man with sunken cheeks. He clutches a necklace, but looks less like a victor than a starving animal clutching a bone. His children wait at home, he mutters, though you don't remember asking. His voice is brittle, defensive, as though daring anyone to claim he doesn't deserve more. The anxiety shifts again. It's no longer just about curses or shadows, it's about survival after this night. If hunger doesn't end, none of this matters. If the guards catch you, your family starves anyway. The tomb's treasures are supposed to answer desperation, but somehow they only deepen it. Performance anxiety creeps in sideways. Every movement feels like a test. If you grab too much, you look greedy. Too little, you look weak. You measure your gestures as carefully as your steps, worried they reveal more than words. You've been here before, haven't you? At the dinner table, pretending you weren't hungry when food was scarce. At work, acting calmer than you felt because panic might cost you more than honesty. The mirror effect presses hard, tomb or no tomb. The performance of survival is the same. A quirky fact surfaces from the dust of memory. Records show that many caught robbers weren't seasoned criminals at all, but ordinary laborers, farmers, craftsmen, pushed into theft by famine or heavy taxes. Poverty made tombs into granaries of last resort. The idea stings. These chambers, built to preserve eternity, became just another pantry raided by the desperate. You wonder if the gods understood, or if judgment was blind to empty stomachs. The debate among the men grows louder. One insists poverty justifies everything. Another argues curses strike regardless of motive. The tension sharpens, every man trying to balance morality against hunger. And here comes the open loop. Who is right? Does desperation excuse crime, or does it deepen guilt? The question gnaws at you, unresolved, looping endlessly in your mind. Humor breaks in clumsily, but you grab it anyway. One man mutters, "If the gods wanted us to starve, they shouldn't have packed so many snacks with the dead." Someone else chuckles, pointing at a golden jar. "Shame it's not full of bread." You add, "If Osiris shows up, I'll trade him this necklace for a hot stew." The laughter ripples thin but genuine. 3 jokes, a fragile feast for empty stomachs, yet the hunger remains. You can feel it in your bones, in the twitch of your muscles, in the way your throat aches for water. The treasure glitters, but it cannot be eaten. That irony strikes you harder than any curse. Reframing seeps in. Maybe hunger itself is the truest judge. The gods may sit on their thrones, but the body's demands outweigh even divine threats. Theft here isn't just crime, it's survival's last argument. You begin to see the robbers not as villains, but as emblems of a timeless truth. Desperation twists morality until it cracks. You pause, leaning against a painted column, letting a healing pause wash through you. The cool stone presses into your back, anchoring you. You listen to your own breath, ragged but steady, and for a moment you remember the simple comfort of food, the taste of grain, the relief of a full stomach. The memory soothes, though it sharpens the ache. The men grow quieter, exhaustion replacing argument. Some cradle treasure like children, rocking it as though it could feed them. Others mutter about plans, where to sell, who to bribe. You know some won't survive the week, not because of curses or guards, but because hunger doesn't end in a single night. Treasure won't change the rhythms of drought or tax collectors. The desperation that drove them here will drive them again, until bodies or consciences collapse. Experts still argue whether the majority of tomb robbers were villains or victims. Was it greed or starvation that pushed them underground? Were they criminals or casualties of a system that hoarded wealth for the dead while the living starved? You feel the ambiguity gnaw. You realize the answer doesn't matter much to hungry bellies. Your torch wavers. You stare at the gold again, but it looks different now, less like wealth, more like food wrapped in disguise. You imagine the necklace melting into bread, the vessel pouring water instead of dust. Your chest tightens. You wonder if that's the curse after all. To stand surrounded by abundance you can't actually eat. You trudge forward, hunger and fear tangled together. The treasure weighs heavy in your sack, but your body feels lighter, weaker. You're caught between fear of divine judgment and fear of waking tomorrow with nothing in your stomach. And you realize hunger is the harsher god. The passage narrows, forcing you into single file. Your sack knocks against the wall with a hollow clink, and the sound makes your blood freeze. One of the men hisses for silence, but the echo has already escaped, rolling up through the corridor like a trumpet blast. You wait, hearts pounding in unison, every ear tilted toward the stair above. Then, a shuffle. Real this time. Not imagined footsteps, not flickering shadows. Sand scrapes against stone. You stiffen, eyes darting to the others. The group freezes, torches shaking in nervous hands. The guards. It doesn't take long. Heavy footsteps descend, voices bark in clipped tones. You press yourself flat against the wall, clutching your sack so tight your fingers ache. This is no longer about curses or shadows. It's about survival in daylight law. The guards burst in with oil lamps that spill steady light, so unlike your jittering torches. The contrast is damning. Their faces are stern, their clubs and spears polished. One man in your group bolts instantly, shoving past the rest, scattering coins and beads in his wake. The noise is unbearable, treasure clattering like bells of guilt. The guard sees him before he reaches the door. He thrashes, howling, words spilling from his mouth. He confesses everything in his panic. Who planned it? Where the tools came from, even names of men not present tonight. His voice cracks, collapsing under the weight of fear. Performance anxiety has transformed into self-destruction, the desperate stage fright of a man speaking before an audience that will decide his fate. You shrink against the wall, trembling. The others stare at the ground, eyes wide, breaths ragged. You know your turn will come. The guards point, demanding explanations. The first man's testimony has already betrayed you. You feel your lips part, words catching in your throat. A quirky little fact pushes through the fog. In surviving records of tomb robber trials, many confessions came not from torture, but from fear. Men babbled before a whip ever touched them. Anxiety alone loosened their tongues. You realize you're standing in the middle of that history, your own mouth threatening to betray you the same way. The open loop torments you. Will you confess to or stay silent? What buys survival? Truth or denial? You can't know, and the uncertainty scrapes your nerves raw. One man tries humor, desperate. "We were touring," he stammers, gesturing weakly to the paintings. Another blurts, "guarding the tomb from other robbers." You almost laugh despite the terror. Then, choking on your own nerves, you whisper, "If Osiris asks, we'll say we were cleaning." 3 jokes, absurd but necessary, floating like fragile lifelines in a chamber drowning in dread. The guards don't laugh. They yank sacks from hands, spilling treasure into piles. Gold glitters in the lamplight, damning evidence impossible to deny. One guard smirks grimly, muttering about fools who thought eternity could be stolen in silence. His eyes are colder than the gods. The mirror effect cuts deep. Haven't you felt this before? Cornered by authority, scrambling for words, heart battering like a trapped bird? Maybe not with spears pointed at you, but with bosses, with parents, with moments where every slip of language felt like a sentence. You see yourself in these trembling men, desperate to control the story, terrified to fail in front of power. Reframing stirs faintly. Perhaps this is what justice always looks like. Not divine punishment, not even human cruelty, but the collapse of fragile psyches under pressure. The tomb didn't need curses. The law didn't need whips. Fear alone is the executioner. A healing pause slips through in the chaos. You focus on one detail, the cool drip of water down a crack in the stone, glinting faintly in lamplight. You let the sound anchor you, steadying your breath. For a moment, you block out the shouting, the trembling, the rattling chains the guards unpack. The water trickles endlessly, calm and indifferent. That indifference soothes you, however briefly. The trial begins not in court, but here, in the chamber itself. The guards demand names, demand explanations. Men stammer, contradict, point fingers. One sobs openly, confessing even crimes he didn't commit, hoping honesty will buy mercy. Another stays stubbornly silent, his jaw clenched, his eyes glassy. Experts still debate whether these ancient trials were just or performative. Were robbers judged for theft, or used as examples to frighten others? Some records read like morality plays, guilt exaggerated for effect. Others show men broken by fear, their testimony rambling, incoherent. You wonder which version you're living, justice or theater. Your throat burns. You feel the words rising, confessions, excuses, prayers. You bite them back, chest heaving. Anxiety gnaws you hollow. You imagine your voice echoing in records, carved into papyri for scholars to mock centuries later. You don't want to be remembered that way. And yet you know, silence may betray you just as loudly as speech. The guards move closer, their lamplight washing over your face. The others stare at you, waiting to see if you'll speak. You swallow hard, gripping your torch until the wood cracks under your nails. The weight of gold, of hunger, of judgment, all press into you at once. And as your lips part at last, you realize whatever leaves your mouth now will echo forever, louder than curses, longer than gold. Your mouth opens, but history rushes in before words can form. You feel it like a hot wind, the sense that whatever you say will be repeated, copied, reshaped, and carried further than any torch can reach. The guard's lamps steady the scene, but already you sense another light, the scribe's lamp, tomorrow or the next day, hovering over a sheet of papyrus as a careful hand turns this night into lines. You are still in the chamber, still sweating, still trembling. At the same time, you are also ink. You can almost hear the reed pen scratch. The men around you shift and cough and bargain and break, and the sound becomes a chorus that will not end with them. Anxiety has set its hooks, and it knows how to travel. The guards call for order. You watch their faces harden into masks made for retelling. In your mind, you see a village mother repeating those faces to her son by hearth glow, warning him away from the cliffs above the necropolis. You see a boatman whisper to a trader whisper to a mason, fear changing shape with every retelling like a jackal slipping between shadows. The core of it doesn't change. Someone went where the dead were meant to rest. Someone felt a pounding heart. Someone heard footsteps that might have been real, might have been imagination. The details shift, but the pulse remains. That is how anxiety survives, by rhythm more than fact. It replicates like a song stuck in the head of a city. You sense, even now, that your breath will echo in lungs that haven't been born yet. A quirky truth drifts to you as if from another room. The scribes at Deir el Medina sometimes wrote case notes like stage scripts. Who entered, who spoke, who faltered, and then copied them for supervisors. There are even ostraka, little pottery shards scrawled with practice lines where students rehearse the names of thieves and judges as if learning a play. You almost smile at the idea. Your panic, somebody's homework. History's least fun group project. You can feel the mirror effect widening. Haven't you grown up on cautionary stories too? The teacher's tale about the student who cheated and was publicly shamed. The office legend of the person who clicked the wrong link and brought down the server. The family warning told so many times you can't tell if it happened to an aunt or a fictional cousin. Fear has its own genealogy. Anxiety is a surname. Listening to it, you recognize your role in the bloodline. You're not only a participant, you're a future ancestor of someone else's nerves. A guard orders you to step forward. You do, and your body shakes less from danger than from the awareness of being watched by past and future at once. The psychological concept ripples through you. Vicarious conditioning. You didn't need to experience every curse to fear them. You learned to be afraid by hearing others tremble. And someday, someone will learn from yours. The scribe's pen is a transmission line. The papyrus is a nerve. A man beside you tries a joke that isn't really one. If they read this in 1,000 years, I hope they get my good side. Another, through clenched teeth, mutters, "Tell them I was taller." You catch yourself whispering, "And braver," just, off camera. 3 thin smiles crack the panic, and yet each joke acknowledges the same truth. You're posing for the future, whether you want to or not. The open loop is larger now. Who writes the version that lasts? The guard with triumph in his voice, the scribe with tidy lines, the priest who needs a story of justice, the widow who needs a story of mercy, or the artisan who craves a good warning to keep his son honest? You cannot control the narrator. You only supply the tremor. Experts will still argue, were curses propaganda to protect wealth or reflections of a people who felt the god's breath everywhere? Was fear engineered from above or grown in the hot soil of hunger from below? The question stays suspended like a lamp smoke ring. Reframing arrives quietly. Maybe anxiety's legacy isn't merely harm. Maybe it is also a map. The stories that rattle you are also guideposts. Don't go alone. Prepare your tools. Respect the dead. Eat before the hard thing. Breathe when the shadows move. The same heartbeat that shakes your hands can time your steps. In the guard's stern faces, you glimpse something unsentimental, a reminder system society designs to keep its edges from fraying. Fear becomes a fence, not pleasant, rarely fair, sometimes necessary. You are marched upward. The corridor tastes of dust turned metallic by lamplight. Somewhere above, you hear the faint rumble of a village sleeping. You imagine the first person who will hear about tonight, a sentry's brother-in-law, a baker with pre-dawn dough, a woman who sells onions by the gate. By noon, the story will have curses. By dusk, a miracle. By next week, someone will swear a statue blinked and pointed, and someone else will swear it was only the wind. Anxiety flourishes in the gaps between witness and echo. Another quirky detail surfaces, almost tender. On ear stellae, carved stones left at temples, worshippers etched outsized ears so gods would listen better. You picture anxious artisans standing in line, placing petitions that were at heart small panics shaped into prayer. My child's fever, my husband's debt, my dream of a jackal in the doorway. Those ears, all listening, are cousins to the carved eyes you left behind. Watchfulness above, attentiveness below. A culture built both to observe and be heard. You pause at the mouth of the tomb while the guards count and record and mutter. A healing pause finds you too. You let the night air settle against your face like a cool cloth. The desert wind moves softly, carrying smells of baked earth and distant water. For a long breath, you are no longer performance, confession, defendant, ancestor. You are only a pair of lungs filling under stars. The stillness gathers you up and reminds you that the world, astonishingly, keeps turning without your fear to push it. The guards nudge you forward and the moment breaks. You step into a future crowded with retellings. The trial will happen, sober or theatrical. The punishment will be framed as justice or sign. The papyrus will crinkle and survive. The students will copy your name until ink runs thin. What the living do best is build scaffolds around uncertainty, then call them stories. It comforts the hand that writes and the eye that reads, less so the chest that trembled in the moment itself. You think of the dead you disturbed and realize their silence is also a legacy. They taught how to stage eternity. You have taught, unwillingly, how not to trespass it. Both lessons will travel. In the centuries to come, travelers will lower their voices in the Valley of the Kings, half from piety, half from rumor. Children will lean in at the edge of lamplight to hear the part about the shadow that grew teeth. A scholar will frown at a line break and wonder if the scribe's hand shook for reasons unrelated to bad light. Anxiety will hover over all of them like heat shimmer, visible, untouchable, persuasive. You cannot know, standing here, which version will harden. Perhaps a tale of justice, perhaps a tale of hunger turned wrong, perhaps only a dull entry in a ledger. Sacks recovered, 3 men detained. Yet when you close your eyes, you can feel where the strongest groove is cut. It isn't on the wall. It's in the mind. Yours, theirs, ours. Fear remembers what stone forgets. That is its talent and its tyranny. The guards gesture again. You nod and move. Somewhere just behind your ribs there is a small, stubborn warmth, like a coal that refuses to go out. Call it shame or lesson or simple human endurance. Call it the wish that whoever reads you later also reads themselves, briefly, in your shaking silhouette and breathes more gently because of it. If anxiety is a legacy, perhaps compassion can be one too. The path from the tomb spills you back into the desert night, but your legs don't feel free. They move stiffly, as if the stone corridors have followed you upward, locking into your joints. The guards push, the sacks clink, the air outside tastes clearer, cooler, but your chest is still heavy. The truth is, you've carried the tomb with you. The stars glitter faintly overhead, distant as any god. You tilt your head back and feel smaller than you ever have. Around you, the desert sighs with a low wind. It should comfort you, but instead it reminds you of the whispers underground, of shadows twisting, of eyes carved into stone. You wonder if they are still staring upward through the sand, watching your every breath. The men stumble along beside you. Some mutter prayers, others clutch their bellies, already worrying about what judgment tomorrow will bring. You hear one whisper to himself that maybe the curse hasn't started yet, that it waits until sleep, until dreams. His voice makes your skin prickle. Anxiety isn't bound to tombs. It follows you into your bed, into your quietest moments, until even rest becomes another trial. You glance at your own hands, still trembling faintly. The sack you hold is nearly empty now. Guards claimed most of the treasure, but the weight hasn't lessened. The shaking proves it. Anxiety isn't gold you can drop. It's an inheritance that clings, passed not by will or ceremony, but by fear itself. A quirky little fact rises in memory. Centuries after Egypt's golden age, Roman tourists still visited the Valley of the Kings. They carved graffiti into tomb walls, leaving names and crude jokes. Some warned of curses, others mocked them. Even then, the legacy of fear lingered, half myth, half memory. You imagine a Roman soldier chuckling while scratching a crude drawing of Anubis, not knowing he was adding another layer to the inheritance of anxiety. Fear survives in strange ways. The open loop deepens. What becomes of you now? Punishment from men? Punishment from gods? Or simply punishment from your own restless mind? None of those threads tie neatly, and the uncertainty gnaws at you more than any verdict could. Anxiety thrives on unfinished endings. One man tries to break the tension with humor. At least if the curse follows us, we'll keep each other company in the afterlife. Another chuckles dryly. I just hope the afterlife has less sand. You manage your own. If the gods are watching, I hope they grade on a curve. 3 laughs flicker like sparks in the desert air. They don't last, but they prove the human instinct. Even when cursed, you crack jokes. The mirror effect presses harder now. You feel the truth of these robbers as kin. Their anxiety isn't ancient, it's yours. The nervousness before judgment, the dread of failure, the suspicion of being watched, the guilty confessions whispered to empty air. You felt all of these, in classrooms, in bedrooms, in offices, in late-night quiet. The tomb is only a stage. The script is timeless. Reframing arrives as you trudge on. Maybe this isn't a story of failure, but of survival. Anxiety isn't just a curse, it's proof of care. Your shaking hands meant you valued life. Your shallow breaths meant you wanted to keep breathing. Fear itself is evidence of the will to endure. Perhaps the gods knew that, and perhaps they carved eyes on tomb walls not to terrify, but to remind, if you tremble, you are alive. You pause on the sand ridge, gazing back at the dark mouth of the necropolis, a healing pause. The wind lifts gently, carrying the smell of stone dust away. The silence here is wider, softer than below. You let your shoulders sink, your lungs fill, your body accept, just for this moment, that you've survived the night. The pause doesn't erase anxiety, but it tempers it, like water cooling a forge. Experts still debate whether tomb robbers' anxiety was divine curse or human conscience. The arguments stretch across dusty journals, across centuries. But standing here, under stars, you feel the answer doesn't matter. Anxiety itself is real enough. Gods don't need to enforce it. Hunger doesn't need to excuse it. Fear is its own enduring force, shaping behavior, shaping memory, shaping legacy. You look at the other men, their faces hollow, their bodies trembling in different rhythms. They don't look like villains. They look like mirrors, reflections of every human caught between need and dread. Some will confess tomorrow, some will deny. Some will curse themselves, some will cling to rituals. And all of them will leave behind not just fragments of treasure, but fragments of anxiety, echoes carried by rumor, myth, and history. The wind hums faintly, like a whisper from the carved walls below. You imagine the gods smiling faintly, not in judgment, but in recognition. Perhaps they understand better than you thought. Anxiety is not just a punishment, it is a companion, a legacy, a teacher. You step forward again, the sand crunching softly beneath your feet. The night stretches endless, your body trembles, but your stride continues. You realize this. Tombs collapse, treasures melt, names fade. But anxiety endures. It passes like a torch, flickering but never extinguished, carried by every trembling hand in every age. And as you walk toward uncertain judgment, you know you are part of that lineage. Restless tomb, restless mind, bound together, whispering across centuries. The desert grows quiet again, softer than a whisper, as if the night itself is finally exhaling after holding its breath for too long. You feel the weight of the tomb fading behind you, but the echoes remain. Shadows, carved eyes, trembling hands, the unshakable rhythm of anxiety that followed you out beneath the stars. It lingers not as punishment now, but as reminder. Fear is as old as hunger, as human as breath, and sometimes it only wants to be heard before it can rest. So you let your steps slow. The sand cools under your feet, the air grows gentle, and the story loosens its grip. You don't need to carry the tomb anymore. You can leave it there, in the folds of stone and silence, while you walk forward lighter. Let the images fade into the background of your mind, the torch smoke curling away, the faint glitter of treasure swallowed back into dust. What stays with you is softer. The lesson that even the anxious heart is still a living heart, still beating, still choosing to move. If this story brought you a little calm tonight, even while wandering through shadows, please subscribe so we can continue walking together every night. And if you're still awake, craving more of these strange, quiet journeys, you can listen to more tales like this in the Bedtime Criminal Psychology playlist on the channel. But most of all, if you've ever lost a pair of shoes or left a part of yourself somewhere without meaning to, tell me. I read every comment before I fall asleep. For now, breathe deeply, let the stillness settle, and let the night carry you where it always wanted, into rest.